The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm JC Lucas with Atlanta Ventures and co-producer alongside Jon Birdsong. In today's episode, Jon sits down with Fred Castellucci, president and CEO of Castellucci Hospitality Group. Fred grew up in Atlanta before heading off to Cornell University. After interning in the consulting world, he quickly realized his heart was in the business of food. Upon returning to Atlanta, he reignited his family's one restaurant group and grew it to 7, and counting, restaurants over the next 11 years. These restaurants include Iberian Pig, Cooks and Soldiers, Double Zero, and the newest one, Recess. In today's episode, they discussed restaurant branding, trends in the industry, how his company survived through COVID, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story.
Fred Castellucci, thank you for being here on the Atlanta Story podcast today.
My pleasure.
Lots of things to talk about today. And I'd say right now we're recording mid-March. A year ago from today, the world was up in flames. And give us a feel of what you were experiencing.
Man, that was... honestly, for me, a career-defining kind of moment. I had been through other kind of crises before. The financial crisis in 2008 was really when I started my career in the restaurant business. And so my small business at the time, one restaurant, was a struggling restaurant in Johns Creek that I had recently taken over after it had gone out of business. And I knew what it was like kind of being in that kind of life or death mode from a business perspective where things were not going well. And
when did you take, you took that restaurant over in 2008?
Yeah, 2008. So it had closed as a franchise of our, business at the time, which was one other restaurant. And so, and the other business that we had at the time was also losing money. And so during that depths of the financial crisis is kind of really where my business philosophy was born. And it really is, at the end of the day, about relationship building. And so at the time, we were so dreadfully slow because, you open a restaurant, usually you have no reputation, but that can be a good thing because people will try you. But in that restaurant, I reopened a restaurant that had closed under the same name in a terrible location on the backside of a shopping center on a highway in Johns Creek. So, pretty much like everything stacked against
recipe for disaster.
Yeah. But, in those early days, it was really about every single customer that came through the door was like everything. I remember specifically one night we had 0 reservations on the books. It was like a Monday or a Tuesday. And I was like certain we were going to roll a 0, And so I called up a few buddies of mine. I was like, hey, you guys got to come in. And they showed up, 4 of them, and they were 4 out of the 6 people we did that whole night.
Wow.
So, that's demoralizing when you work a 16-hour day open to close. You get there in the morning, you open up the doors, you take deliveries, you answer the phones, you do all the things you need to do to get ready at 5 o'clock. Some staff shows up, everything's ready, the food's there, and no one shows up. And then you close it at the end of the night, and you have less money in your bank account than you did when you started the day. Incredibly demoralizing feeling. And so, I had been to a very low place with the business before.
Yeah. And that was coming long ago. Right out of Cornell, the creme de la creme of hospitality. Was the vision of always to come back to Atlanta and take over that restaurant?
No, it was really circumstantial. When I went to school, my goal was really to get out of the restaurant business. So I was like,
really?
I saw growing up, my dad is a restaurant entrepreneur. I saw him succeed and fail 3 times growing up. It was traumatizing for the family, moving and struggling. And, we're in a house one day, or we're in a, 3 kids and a dog and a cat in a 1-bedroom apartment the next, And so that was a struggle growing up. And so I didn't want that for myself or for my family eventually. And so the goal was to go to Cornell and try to, figure out a career where I can make some money. I started out thinking about, banking or consulting or something like that. And then I realized I absolutely hated that profession. Also, the people that worked in that profession, not a big fan of those people either. So that was kind of where things definitely solidified for me that, I love food and wine. I have a passion for hospitality and people. And so how could I satisfy that need while also being successful at what we did? And so I went on a little boondoggle and sold some franchises, I did that while I was at school. So collected some franchise fees and got some restaurants open. And so that was what I was doing at the time. And then by the time I graduated, those same franchisees were going out of business. So, in financial crisis.
Yeah, 08. It was a tough time to graduate.
Yeah, definitely. And, but also great opportunity.
Yeah.
Because, I had the opportunity to open a business for essentially no capital.
Right.
I was actually talking about it yesterday in my leadership training that I do with our managers. There was a regular customer of ours at the original restaurant that sat at the bar. He's like the only guy I knew at the time that had money. Yeah. And so I called him up and was like, hey man, I got this opportunity to take over this restaurant, just went out of business in Johns Creek. I didn't tell him it was a terrible location or any of the other things around it. I was like, I need 10 grand to get the liquor license, so I can open the business. He's like, meet me at my house in 30 minutes. He literally goes down to his basement, pulls 10 grand.
Cash.
Yeah, cash. Hands it to me. It's like, with a handshake, I owe you.
And that was how the Johns Creek restaurant just maintained.
And that's how I got started. And then I started seeing results, like
in the Johns Creek restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. 6 covers turned into 12 covers, turned into 50 covers, turned into 100 covers, 200 covers. And so I saw that happening, and our mission statement as a company is passionately pursuing the perfect dining experience, one guest at a time. And that mission really came from those early days, which was, you better take care of the customer that's in your seat and do everything you can to make sure they have a great experience, especially when you only have a handful of them coming through the door. And so the way I knew how to do that best was develop relationships,
right,
and get to know people, get to know what they like and why they're coming back, or why do they like coming here, and do more of that, and just make those connections and recognize people, make them feel special. And that was the business philosophy. And so that's what helped us grow,
So fast forward to today, you've got Iberian Pig, 00, Cooks and Soldiers, and that's just the start.
Yeah, so we've got 7 restaurant locations, 6 concepts, one of which we just recently spun out into its own separate company, which we're excited about. That's Recess, our fast casual brand. And then we've got on the docket for this year, the opening of Mujo, which is our fine dining sushi restaurant that actually came out of the pandemic, which we're excited about doing that. That should be open by the end of the year in its own brick and mortar space. Will be the most expensive restaurant in Atlanta when it does open. So we're excited about that. And
so Iberian Pig was the one that took y'all from Johns Creek to kind of main stage. That's how I perceive it. Is that a fair assumption?
No, absolutely. So at about a year and a half in Johns Creek, I realized while the business was doing better and we were breaking even and then profitable, I knew that there was no way we were going to really level up unless I did something, on my own, unique concept, something that hadn't been done yet in Atlanta, and thankfully my sister was also graduating at that time from Cornell, and I tapped her and was like, hey, come down and let's do this together. And so she came back and she took over as the general manager of the Johns Creek restaurant that allowed me then to go and open Decatur.
That was the beginning of the playbook.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Decatur, out of all places, because Iberian Pig, that's a staple there, right? I remember early 2010, 2012, people would go to Iberian Pig from all over. It wasn't just like the neighborhood restaurant. It was you're going to Decatur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we opened in 2009, and just it's crazy because I remember the first time I went to the location, and there's no street visibility because it's on the square. There's no dedicated parking. 2 things in Atlanta you'd say like, oh well, don't even think about it. Like, what
right.
do you. And even my parents were like, that's a terrible idea. It's And
so what did you see that no one else did?
it was just like it's just an energy about the square and where I kind of saw things going, and the MARTA construction had just finished. And so it was looking really good. And the space just had like good bones and energy, and the brick and the wooden rafters and the wood floors. There's just like and the acoustics in there are really good, like things you don't really think about, but like there's not a lot of like truly hard surfaces in there. It's a lot of wood, and
you do feel like you travel somewhere else when you go there.
And I remember the first time I was there, I met the landlord over there, and I was trying to act older than I was, and I wore this cheap, oversized Joseph A. Banks suit, like, buy one, get three free type deal.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like my look back in 2008, 2009. So I showed up on the Decatur Square in a suit. I had to look so ridiculous because, Decatur, it's chill. It's like, it's
walking,
bohemian. Yeah. And, I met the landlord. Years later, he told me, he's like, if I had known you were like 23 years old when I met you that first day, I never would have leased you the space.
And it's thriving today.
Yeah, man.
10 years,
it's the most. It's one of the most resilient of all of our restaurants. That brand, and that's why one of the core growth vehicles for us is that brand, and we're taking that now to other cities. So we're getting close on a deal in Nashville, and then we're looking at Charlotte and a few other places after that.
Okay, so now let's step back and so a year ago.
Mm-hmm. We finally got back to the pandemic. It was a long road to get there, but it's kind of good context for like understanding my frame of mind as we're going into that. And so for me, it's obviously terrifying. So overnight, your business model is becoming dangerous. Right. They're saying you should not go out to eat at restaurants or you're going to die. Like that was basically what they were telling people.
Yeah.
And then everything shut down. And I had like a decision to make, which was, what do we do? Do we try to keep our businesses open, serve the public, keep our staff employed? How do we navigate those waters? Or do we just pull the plug, shut everything down, and wait till people say we can reopen again? My ingrained in me is just like this level of perseverance that I get from my dad. I mean, as an entrepreneur, he succeeded and failed 3 times. I watched that growing up. It's like he never gave up, and like it didn't matter what it was. Like he would go down to Westminster and take money out of the checking account on Monday morning and bring it to Westminster to make sure that we had like a tuition and school we could go to, and then bounce all the checks on Tuesday because he did that. It's like, so I just saw that level of perseverance and like fight that I saw in my dad and my mom growing up as entrepreneurs. And I was like, you know what? We've gotten to this far, in this level of success, to actually be in a position where we can actually make an informed decision here, and not one that's, emotional or knee-jerk or purely based on the financials. And so I looked at it and I said the cost of closing is, we lay off our employees, we, or furlough our managers, or we shut the restaurants down. The product is thrown away, and then when
no one knows when you're going back.
Who knows when you're coming back online? And then, after that, then you have to reopen all those businesses, which takes staffing, hiring people up again, and bringing in product. And I put the cost at least $100,000 per store, like to shut down. Okay. And so you multiply that, it's like $700K across the whole company. I said, I'll lose $700K before calling it quits. Like I will absolutely drain that money right down the fucking drain. To basically to give us a chance to fight and win, as opposed to just saying, all right, this is too big. This is bigger than us. Let's just, live to fight another day. Like that's just not my mentality. Like it's never over till it's over. Yep. And like, even when it's over, there's still options. Like there's always an alternative that you're not thinking about. Like a lot of people like to frame decisions as black and white. Are we open? Are we closed? Like it's more nuanced than that. Like, is there another path? And so the path we took was, we're going to stay open. We're going to keep all of our managers, salary managers, at full salary. We were going to bring in as many hourly employees as we possibly could to handle takeout. We filed unemployment on behalf of everyone in the company, so we knew that everybody was going to get some sort of wage during that time. And then what we did is, in the course of less than a week, we built out our own e-commerce stores for every single business.
Text messaging. We started doing that to try to bring, sales in via text to let people know, hey, we're open. Because a lot of people didn't know who was open, who was closed, what people were doing. Could they go to eat? How could they get restaurant food? Was takeout even allowed? So there was a lot of questions during those shutdowns. Everybody's like, will you get the virus from takeout?
Exactly. So it's just terrifying time, and our leaders were doing a really poor job of communicating what was okay, what was not okay. Like when they shut down restaurants, like a lot of people didn't even know like what that even meant. Like, could you do takeout? Could you not do takeout?
Is that why you were on CNN, Fox News?
Yeah, man.
Every which way possible.
Just trying to tell people, hey, there's another alternative here, and that's one that some people aren't thinking about. And some of the key things we did was we tried to address the demand issue, which is tell people that, hey, takeout's a thing and order it from us, and this is what we're doing, and redesigning our offerings. And, we were up on Uber Eats, about a month earlier than everything went down because I saw what was going on in China and I saw what was going on in Seattle after that. And I was like, man, we got to get ready. This is coming for us. It happened a lot quicker than I expected it to. But, the week of the shutdowns, all of our profiles were up on Uber Eats that week. And then within the end of the week, we had e-commerce stores for all of our brands and then launched our own delivery using our own employees so we could keep more people hired and engaged.
And so that was late March.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
I mean, I remember the week of March 16th is when it really started, sales went off a cliff. It was just like, that was like the last weekend of like normalcy. And it felt weird. Like the whole business felt weird. Everything about it was weird. But it was invigorating in the end, honestly.
Why do you think why do you think you got invigorated by it?
Man, I'm like a crisis type manager. Like, I am like
a Churchill.
Oh man, it just like gets me going. Like it's like there's nothing that will, get your blood going like an existential crisis for your business. And so for me, like not everybody's like that, but like I needed to like feel alive. You know what I mean? Like that's what gets me energized. When things are going smooth and life is normal, I get really bored easily and I do stupid stuff. And
are y'all stronger today?
Oh, for sure. We have a stronger management team. We showed that we're dedicated to our people more than ever. And it's easy to say you have a great culture when things are going well, but when like shit hits the fan, like your people find out who you really are. Like what's your level of commitment? What's your level of integrity?
What are your values?
What are your values? And are you willing to stick to them? I think there's perfect examples of a lot of restaurateurs out there that have become famous saying how great they are for their people, but the first thing they did during the lockdowns was they laid everybody off. Didn't pay anybody. Gave them like a less than a week of severance. It's like, especially for people that I know have the money to do it. Like
right.
I'm like a little guy compared to a lot of these bigger companies. I know they have the pockets to do it. Like, so to me, that really kind of pissed me off because I saw a lot of people in our industry who are applauded for how great they are, but when, things hit the fan, you find out who they really are. And the actions speak louder than anything you've said or written or done before.
And we're going to take a quick break here and share that this podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business out of Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com. What will you tell your grandkids, 50, 60 years from now on the pandemic and how you got through it? What 3 lessons would you tell them?
They probably won't want to listen. They probably won't want to listen to me at that point. They're probably like,
hopefully you'll still
that was like the pandemic of 1918. Like nobody cares about that anymore. Like get out of here. No, I think, the number one lesson that I tried to infuse into the organization is just adaptability. Like, you have to be willing to adapt constantly. If you're somebody that opposes change, you're not going to be successful in our organization. And, the pace of change is only increasing. So we all have to be incredibly adaptable. And we've seen that over and over in the last, 20, 30, even longer number of years, where business models become obsolete overnight, And so it's the people who get ahead of that ultimately succeed. So adaptability, regardless of pandemic or anything, is such a critical piece. And the second thing I think is, crises are great opportunities because they allow your people as well as the outside public to really get a sense of who you are. Because your actions do speak louder than some press release or whatever you're putting out there, book or, podcast even. It's right. Like anybody can say anything. It's what you do that matters. And so, I think those are the two big lessons for me.
Well, let's talk about the naming of some of these restaurants, right? Iberian Pig, Cooks and Soldiers. Like, where did that come from? Because that is one of the greatest restaurant names in my opinion.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, for me, I think it's restaurant naming. It's definitely more of an art than a science, for sure. Almost every single one of our restaurants I've named. And
do you start out with like 100?
Then I do. I start out with like a big document that usually when I'm researching the concept and kind of crystallizing my thoughts around what we want to do, that's when I start creating just a big list and going through that list over and over and seeing if anything sticks. And usually I'm looking for an English name because that's something that people are easily remember. And so Cooks and Soldiers is not an American restaurant. It's a Basque restaurant. And so I was thinking about what is it about Basque country that is unique. And there's a festival every year called Tamborada, and the whole city of San Sebastian erupts into this like raucous party, and people march through the streets in soldier uniforms and chef uniforms. And so that to me was, symbolized a lot of their culture. And so that's where that name came from. Every name has like a unique story though,
sure.
And I think that having a story behind the name is important. Most customers are never going to even ask or know the story behind it, but I think it's important to have that.
Yeah, it's infused. When Iberian Pig just kind of falls off the tongue, you're like, it's authentic.
My wife actually named Recess. So she was the one who came up with that name actually on a walk, because we were really struggling with that concept, coming up with the name for it, because it had this kind of like West Coast vibe, more health-centric, vegetable-centric concept, but it wasn't supposed to be like a health concept, So finding that like right balance of something that was like fun, irreverent, kind of has positive connotation, is an English word. That was a tough one.
Recess, give the listeners just what is that?
So Recess is our fast casual concept. It's our most casual of any of our restaurants. During the pandemic, we actually went ghost kitchen with Recess.
Okay.
And did takeout only and have continued to do that out of the kitchen at Bar Mercado, our other restaurant at Krog Street. And that's been an interesting success story because, Bar Mercado was our least successful restaurant going into the pandemic. And we reconcepted it. Mm. I just spent a bunch of money redoing the interiors of the dining room. And I had done a media dinner, new chef team, the whole 9 yards.
Pandemic hits.
After I spent all the money, after we reconcept, new menu, new everything, I did a press dinner on like March 4th. And we did a private dinner with a bunch of media, and like the chef team like blew them away. Food was fantastic and they loved it. We started getting like little nibbles of press on it, and pandemic hit, and like no one's talking about your reconcept in a pandemic. No one cares.
And so the concept of ghost kitchens, you can create any sort of any sort of restaurant, use any kitchen, and there's it's location agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the?
Yeah, I mean, I think that during the pandemic, especially when we were in the shutdowns, every restaurant was a ghost kitchen.
Yeah.
Literally, like even if you have an existing concept there, like Umi Sushi, it's just a ghost kitchen because they're just making food and sending it out for delivery and takeout. And so that's really the definition of a ghost kitchen is a restaurant with no dining room, that people can't actually just go in and visit and buy food or drink. And so, we use that kind of as an opportunity to try some new ideas. And so we did new ideas in a lot of different businesses. Bar Mercado, we just reconcepted the restaurant into more of a Latin American restaurant. And what was amazing is it worked.
Yeah.
Like the food traveled better, people liked it more, and our sales year over year were up every single month for all of 2020, which is insane.
Well, what's interesting is when I take my wife out to a Castellucci group restaurant, I know I'm not gonna. I feel like I get good value, right? Like it's going to be a really good meal, and it's not going to be. I'm not going to look at it and be like, wow, this was $300, right? I mean, it's well priced for what you get, and now you're going and saying we're going to create the creme de la creme.
Yeah. But for me, it is about value at the end of the day, because when you dine at Mujo, when it opens.
Yeah. And the location been announced?
Yes. So it'll be on the same side of Howell Mill as Cooks and Soldiers.
Okay.
In a small 1,200 square feet space.
Exclusive.
Yeah. So it's only 15 seats. So with a private dining room, an additional 8 seats there, and a small 6-seat cocktail bar. So it'll be likely the smallest restaurant in Atlanta.
Wow.
Of a sit-down nature like that. So it's going to be very, very unique experience.
And what's the story of the why behind that restaurant?
So it kind of goes back to my first trip to Japan, and when I fell in love with Japanese culture and food and people and hospitality. It was just an eye-opening experience.
Just a kernel of thought, like one day I'm going to open up a sushi restaurant.
No, not at all. In fact, I dined at Jiro from the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi, who's actually the most famous Japanese person. I don't know if you know that. He's more famous than the Prime Minister of Japan, like more name recognition worldwide. And so I had an opportunity to dine at his restaurant, and he made me and Lauren dinner that night. And it just blew my mind. And that quality of experience, I'd never had sushi on that level before, ever. And then not only did the next night, we had basically a similar experience with steak at a place called Shima. And then a similar experience at a bar called Bartender, which is hilarious, very Japanese, using that English word in like a funny way. Anyway, but every single one of these experiences, I felt this, not only this incredible quality, but dedication to doing one thing at the highest level for your entire life. Like these guys, the guy, Shima at Shima, easily in his 50s or 60s, Jiro's in his 80s. The
perfecting
guy, the bartender,
his craft every day.
None of these guys let anyone touch the final product. They literally are one piece of sushi at a time, one piece of beef at a time for each guest, like one cocktail at a time. No one is allowed to make cocktails in that bar except for that one guy. The people around him are staging things for him and apprenticing, and so I saw that and just this level of care and focus on hospitality and the customer. Then I came back to the U.S. and I started dining at other similar style restaurants, omakase restaurants. It's almost like they took the Japanese thing and then bastardized it in the U.S. and made you feel uncomfortable. Like, we went in, restaurants in New York and, elsewhere they make you feel like you're lucky to be there. It's not this level of warmth and hospitality that we try to give in our restaurants every day. I was like, there's maybe an opportunity for growth there, and then I dined at a restaurant in Greenwich Village called Shuko, and J. Trent Harris, the chef that was there at the time, was taking care of us, that was the first time I gotten that hospitality that I had over there. Ironically, not a Japanese guy, but that connection and that care and the guests. And, my wife, didn't like raw scallop. And so, he made a cooked scallop piece of nigiri for us and just customized the meal and made sure that
chief recruiting hat came on?
Yeah. And I was like, can we combine what we know about hospitality with this product on the highest level? So we started getting to know each other, and, he came down to Atlanta and showed him around the city. And then the pandemic hit, and we're like, how would we do this pop-up? Because we had planned to do a pop-up in May of 2020 as a omakase only 8-seat, 2-week type deal. And said
now
to him,
you can't meet in person. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, how do we do this? Can we do a takeout version at the highest level? And so he came down and, he used my mom's Camry, and we put him up in a hotel. My buddy has a hotel, and they didn't have any people in the hotel. So put him up in the hotel at a really low cost, and we launched this takeout only pop-up concept. And I knew the very first night that I had the takeout that it was the real deal.
Anyone who got it put it on social media.
Yeah.
That's a good sign. So back to Recess real quick. Is there a technology, is this a technology focused first
Definitely.
restaurant?
Yeah, definitely. That's where we're going with it. So
what does that mean?
So we partnered with Eric Goranson and Nick Miller, both previously tech entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So, or at least Nick tech entrepreneur, and Eric was his head of product, and but also a Bain guy. So he kind of knows a lot about different types of businesses and worked at restaurants before. And so we kind of all came together and we said, Nick brought this idea to the table that was like, with everything that's happening in the pandemic and the changes around, I had this idea that we could scale technology solutions alongside a restaurant concept.
Okay.
And so the idea would be to build those solutions for yourself with the goal of someday maybe other people using them, selling them software subscriptions, or even potentially franchising and selling those software subscriptions to your franchisees. But really the idea was to bring the three of us together with Eric as the CEO who's going to run the company. Mm-hmm. Nick and I kind of in the background, one of us advising on food and hospitality and guest experience, and Nick advising on the technology piece. And could we create something cool and scalable and unique? And what I think is interesting is, when we first started talking, Recess wasn't even part of the equation. We were going to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And, I said, look, guys, we're already doing this. Like, we have this concept. It's got a great following, great brand recognition. People love it. And we've already gone ghost kitchen. And our sales have not been impacted. Like, we literally, through the pandemic,
we are the first customer.
We're even over a previous year when the industry is down 30, 40, 50%. This business is ghost kitchen, and it's doing the same as it was before. The strength of the brand is there. Let's take this and run with it. And how does this look in a scalable format?
So will Recess be, do you predict Recess will be a chain that grows faster than the others just because it's flexible?
By far. So we're looking for very small footprints, really focus on the takeout delivery piece, efficiencies, catering. And we already have our first location and likely our second one on the way. So the first location is going to be in Buckhead, right there next to Iberian Pig, Buckhead, actually, in that same building, in that former restaurant space. There's small 1,400 square feet already built out as a kitchen. So we're thinking about using unique spaces of restaurants that maybe have gone out of business to try to scale this brand in a interesting way.
You talk about Gather, right? And I feel like anytime Atlanta Ventures comes across a technology company in the food space, it's like talk to Fred, right? You've kind of created this niche of, I will look at anything, try most things, and just experiment. that's proven beneficial. Gather great story. We've had Nick on the podcast. Where did that sort of experimentation? Because not every restaurateur is like that.
Yeah. So
where did it come from, and why?
Well, I've always had like a strong interest in technology, and so as early as 2011, I was introduced to a startup here in Atlanta called We & Co.
Oh, yeah.
With Jared and TJ. And I just connected with these guys, and I had wanted to, like I said, I get energized by crisis. Like in normal times, I'm mostly bored, and so I'm just constantly trying to find new ideas and stuff to do and things to tinker with. And so I had the itch to get involved in a startup. And so I got involved with these guys and came on. While I was running the restaurants, I took a role of like business development, and like they gave me some shares in the company, and I like worked on it like 1 to 2 days a week. And during like 2012 and 2013, while I was getting ready to open Cooks and Soldiers at the time. But it just like I got the bug, and
that's how you met Nick and Alex.
That's how I met Nick and Alex when they were first getting started, and David Cummings, and just like I got introduced to a lot of the Atlanta startup community at that time, and it's just fun. Like it's just fun.
You, Porter, and I went to that dinner.
That's right. We went to that dinner at Bones, which and that's how I got to know you guys. I wish I invested in Sales Loft. I don't think there was an opportunity there though. But it's one of those things where it's been fun to get to know people, and it's just one of the things that I get energized by is like doing fun projects and building stuff with other fun, smart people. Yeah. And that's what just gets me energized. And so that's why I'm excited about Recess, because Nick and Eric are great. And, I'm big on, like I said, relationship building. That's like the core philosophy for me.
Well, when we launch this, Intown Golf Club will be open, and there's a wait list, but you've taken over all of F&B there, which we would be some lost cows in the pasture without you.
Man, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
And I remember you saying about Intown, this is a blank canvas, right? Where most of your concepts that you come up with, name, brand, and then it's like, all right, well then we have constraints around the menu. Just talk about kind of the blank canvas Intown, because personally, I mean, I've been very excited about Intown, but the food is almost as big a selling point as the indoor golf.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited about it because when I first heard about the concept, from David and met Michael and got to understand what was going on, I realized that I could definitely add some value for sure. And I saw this concept, and I know that, it's very golf centric, obviously, and the selling point is golf. But from what I knew about those type of businesses, those experiential businesses, is the actual driver in many of those instances is actually food and beverage. Like the driver of revenue, profitability is really food and beverage.
And the ironic thing is that most of those places, the food isn't great. Yeah. It's hot dog, hamburger.
Exactly. So I was like, how can we take a unique approach to this? And, the first thing I thought of was like Soho House. It's like, how do we create that style of experience with this golf layer on it? And I thought it would be perfect in Atlanta, and the concept is brilliant. This like high-end private club. It's like indoor only golf experience, even though there's big patio and all that stuff. I think it's brilliant, and it's something that obviously has taken foot right away in Atlanta. So I was like, also thinking about the menu and the food and beverage component of what that looks like. I've always wanted to do this like kind of like elevated sports bar concept, and I just never got around to doing it. And it just wasn't like who I was. I would tend to overthink things and, make it too high end, too fine dining. I mean, I'm freaking opening a 15-seat sushi restaurant. It's like, I take it too far. I take it too far. And it was fun, like not like to get out of my own way and not take it too far and really try to create something that was appropriate for the membership and the level of dining that I thought people would really latch onto. The type of food you want to have like every day.
Well, time will tell on Intown because it's a brand new concept.
It's going to be a wild ride. I think that like any restaurant opening, it's going to be challenging. Yeah. So I think that it's going to be fun to watch. A few more before we close. So when it's all said and done, how many restaurants? What's the market cap of Castellucci? The Castellucci group. Who knows, man? As long as I'm still energized to keep doing it and I'm passionate about it and excited about it, I'll keep doing it. I think that, there's an opportunity for us to create a really valuable family business that could last generations if we do it right. Yeah. I know a lot of, you build tech companies to be sold or to take public, and I get that mentality. But restaurants are really not like that, at least the kind that we do, like the fine dining, experiential restaurants. So how can we create something that, may last beyond all of us? Yeah. And that's really what I've been thinking about lately. And so that's a good transition. Two little ones. How has the work world changed as a father? Well, I mean, since Vivian's only 8 months old, we had her in the middle of the pandemic, and Liv has been home with our nanny throughout the last year. I mean, we've just had so much time together. Even though we're working from home all day and night, I'm still going into the restaurants, just not quite as much as I used to. And it's been great. I mean, we've had a lot of time together. I mean, we honestly need a little separation, I think, at this point. I think everybody's reached that point where, too much of a good thing is too much, but it's been great. So you're thinking Nashville, did I hear Charlotte as well early on? Yeah, those are kind of the initial targets, Research Triangle, and then we kind of move out from there. And will Iberian Pig be the brand that you're thinking? Yeah. Awesome. Well, we always finish up on the question of why Atlanta and what's Atlanta done for you. I mean, I could go on and on about this, but what I'll say is the way we came to Atlanta was in '97. My dad had just lost everything in his business and wanted a fresh start. So he literally picked Atlanta out of a Forbes magazine of fastest growing cities in the country, put a dog, a cat, 3 kids in a Volvo station wagon, drove down south. We stayed at the La Quinta Inn in Norcross for 2 weeks while they found a house. Where'd y'all drive from? Rhode Island. Okay. He sold every possession he had, including his Rolex and an old Civil War gun that his grandfather had to afford the down payment on our house in Johns Creek. And everything has stemmed from that one decision to just start over in a new place. And Atlanta's given us everything. I mean, this is the ultimate starting over, new success story in this city. And I think a lot of people have had that success story, which is what's so exciting. And we're just in the first quarter of the game. I think so too. I mean, this city is about to explode for generations to come. What neighborhood would you put another high-end restaurant in? I mean, here's the thing. I live in Morningside, Ansley area, and I love that neighborhood so much. My favorite neighborhood in Atlanta. And so that's why I'm never going to put a restaurant there, because it'll ruin it for me. So I can't be in yoga shorts walking down the street and have a restaurant where our employees are like, hey, is that Fred and Lauren with their kids? He looks terrible. Anyway, so that's why. Fred, thank you so much for being on the Atlanta Story podcast. Thanks, man. It's fun. This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Lucas and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.